So this is just a brief update and a few thoughts about the providence of God. And when it seems like you're putting out a lot of efforts and not really seeing fruit from it, or it feels like what you're doing is falling on dry ground. So um, I've mentioned in a couple of other videos that I have been working on some efforts to help some Afghan friends that had to evacuate to Pakistan a year ago. And it's been kind of an adventure. I got involved in it because my friend Mark Ritchie had asked me to help with his Bible studies, and then this whole thing with Pakistan basically holding a knife to their throat and bleeding them dry with extortion and exploitation and threats of deportation. That all started. Um, December 1st, Mark asked me to kind of take over the classes for a little bit. And so I did, and I haven't really talked to him since then. I had a few very um, brief text messages, but I didn't talk to him until Friday, 2 days ago. And I was in the middle of the lesson with one of the Afghan groups, and he sends me a Zoom link and asks me, and so I'm on my iPad with the Afghans, and I go on my phone to go on Mark's, and he's going to speak at this conference that he's zooming into a conference in Lahore to do this discussion, Pakistan, to do this discussion between him and an Islamic imam on how Islam versus Christianity sees grace. So this is Friday. And in this Zoom link that I'm on, there is this little house church that's kind of come into this and been added to this group that Mark has asked me to teach. So I'm teaching Mark's people, and then there's this whole new group of Afghan believers in there. And so afterwards, they asked me if they can meet Mark and introduce himself. And again, Friday was the first time I talked to Mark in a long time, and I'm like, okay, if he's like, I don't know what the situation was still. He just told me he wasn't well, and so I said, okay, let's do it Sunday morning at 7. If I can get him to commit to that, then let's go ahead and do that. And so we did this morning. And it was really, really cool to be able to sit in on this call. They shared their testimonies, and Mark was sharing. We started off, and he told them a little bit about his story and like why he was so committed to the country of Afghanistan and Afghan Christians. His family was in Afghanistan in the 50s, and when it was under a monarchy, and his dad, I guess, was in the U.S. military. So Mark spent 5 years of his youth in Afghanistan, and he, while they were there, he said that the only church that was there was basically for foreigners, and that the entire time that they were there, they only knew one Christian Afghan, one believer, but they had heard about this underground church that was out there, but they never met any of them. And so his family has been involved in ministry in the area, Afghanistan, Pakistan, for basically the last 70 years. His dad was in a car accident. He was building a hospital in Afghanistan. He was in a car accident. He said we didn't know if they were if it was sabotage or not, but we do know that the doctor that treated my dad was shot. And so, his dad died in Afghanistan. He's buried in Kabul, and his mom was in ministry for decades, following the death of his father in the area in Afghanistan, Pakistan. She died in early 2020, and she's also buried in Kabul. And so that's really like he has, the blood of his family is literally in Afghanistan. So that's part of the reason why, this, helping Afghan people and, building the Afghan church is so important to him. And early on, when I started helping him with his, his classes there, I was in a couple of meetings with some of the people that were organizing events. Originally, it was mainly with Pakistani pastors, and they would do these big conferences and have all of these people come in, and it was, it was a good time of worship. But Mark's heart is really for evangelism, and he was, a year ago this time, he was very discouraged because he wasn't really seeing, he didn't feel like he was seeing the fruit of that. He was thinking, is this really reaching people who don't know Jesus yet? And so that's where it was a year ago. And so being able to sit in on this meeting this morning, where there's this whole group of Christians, and tell their story, it was just so cool to be able to see that, to not only to be able to hear their stories, but to know that, God was showing Mark this, that it hasn't been in vain, it's not in waste, that. And one of the things he said was, the Spirit of God is still moving in Afghanistan. It was moving even though the church tried to be suppressed. It's still moving now. And it was just to hear the stories about how people came. It's all different. Some people were impacted in different ways. But just to see how God uses like the little pieces, somebody's a friend with somebody, and they told them about Jesus. And this one man said, I didn't see how Jesus could be God, but, I liked my friend, and we kept meeting and going to Bible studies, and the friend was sharing with me about these dreams that he was having. And, and it's just so amazing to hear the stories. And towards the end of the call, Mark said, I can see that, in your stories, that God's answered the prayers of my parents and their friends that were praying for, that God would move and bring, Afghans to Jesus, that God is working. He has working, and he still is. And I think that sometimes that's something that we need to remember. I know that in the American church, there's a lot of paranoia. You feel like, your Christianity is going to end, or, it's like the end of what we know as like this secularism is going to be able to blot out the church. Well, I mean, the only way you can really say that is if God is dead, because Jesus said that, that the gates of hell will not prevail against his church. And, it's also written that it's not by force nor by might, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of heaven's armies. And if you are allowing the Spirit to move, then there's nothing that's going to be able to stop God or stop his church. If you're not inviting in the Spirit, then yeah, it probably will. Whatever it is that you have, that this Christianity without the Spirit of God, it's really not Christianity. Yeah, that probably will die out, and it probably should die out if the Spirit isn't there. So the other thing I wanted to say was, for those of you who are doing things, putting things out there, feeling like you feel like God's called you to do something, but you're not seeing the fruit of it. Mark wrote Spirit of the Rainforest 30 years ago in the 90s. And you might say, I mean, there's quite a few people that do know about it, but you probably would say, was it really a commercial success? I don't know. But when it came out, it was going to be promoted by some big Christian organization. And then there were some people that complained, and because there's some things in that book, Spirit of the Rainforest, that are portray some harsh realities of life, and they didn't, people didn't like it. They were offended by it, and so it kind of got blacklisted. And it's just been sitting out there, kind of doing sales for a little while. But I can't tell you how many times in this whole saga, going and talking to people, finding help, that people have said they know who Mark is. They said, oh yeah, I read his book. I read his book. I read his book. And So I'll just say, if you feel like God's put on your heart to write a book, then write it. And then I'm not saying don't promote it, but just, trust that he's going to use it. Even if the time frame doesn't seem like what you think it should be, or even if what um, what most people would see as success as an author, like going and doing book tours and being on the New York Times bestseller list, maybe God's going to use it in a different way. And what is it that you are writing it for? And so if he's put it on your heart, write it, put it out there, and you do your best to steward it, right? That what he's given you, but you trust him for the rest of it. Because, it's all these little pieces that you don't know how God's going to use it. The same thing, we had, I don't think I've shared this here. I've been doing updates in my apologetics group, but I guess I haven't done very many here. But we hear the testimony of someone in the other house church that we meet with, and his story was that he came to know God because he had been questioning Islam because they're Shia, and the Taliban came in and killed his dad and his brother, and he just was questioning why, how could they kill a fellow Muslim? He read the Quran for himself and saw that, that what the Taliban were doing was in line with the tenets of Islam. It wasn't in violation of it. And he said he was listening to a YouTube channel out of Iran, and they were preaching on the verse, anyone who does not love his brother does not know God, because God is love. And it was that sermon that really wasn't the only thing that brought him to Jesus, because the Holy Spirit uses a lot of different things in our lives as human beings. We're all unique individuals, and he uses different things to bring us to him. But that was the final thing that opened his eyes to who Jesus was. And so when you're putting things out, whether you're writing things or you're doing YouTube videos, and it just seems like there's no fruit, I know sometimes it can be discouraging. For the journal, an unexpected journal, we've been in 5 years, right? We've done 20 issues, have over 100 authors, I think like 300 pieces, don't remember exactly. And we've gotten some feedback, but it's still, sometimes it seems like you're putting a lot out, you're not seeing the fruit. And I'll just say that, again, if God's put it on your heart to write something, he's using it. He will be using it. And you just have to trust him on that. And sometimes he'll let you see the fruit of that. Like today. Today he let Mark see some of the fruit. So anyway, so I gotta go. I have to go into my Bible study. Hope you have a great day.